Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you, Rabbi Strauss, for this invitation to speak today on Shabbat Shuvah. Now, some days I feel good, and some days I get upset. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten up in the morning. Sometimes I'm a little rushed. I'm all dressed and ready to go. I get to the back door and the little tray where I keep my keys. And my keys aren't there. And I want to know who moves my keys. I find them in all kinds of places. I tear the whole house apart. Sometimes I find them in my pant pocket on the second floor. I think my wife must put them there. She thinks it'll be easier for me to find them. Sometimes they're still in the lock on the back door of the house. Very convenient for somebody who'd like to see what we've got. But the thing is, I know where the keys are, even though my wife always asks me, well, where did you last leave them? I left them in this little thing in the back door. And when I'm in a hurry, I got to get where I'm going. It can be very upsetting. It really is. Anybody ever have this happen to you? There's a little something, a dybbuk, floating around Jewish houses. Now, eventually, I always find my keys. And they're always found, of course, and I don't know how this is, but it's always the last place I look. But I always find them. And I guess it was for people like me that the sages in the Talmud knew that when people are aggravated and upset and fit to be tied over losing something, they needed to be treated differently than other people. So what does the Talmud actually say? It's a very interesting passage, and it's a bit bizarre. It says that when people would come to pray at the temple in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, most people would enter through the right-hand gate, and they would walk through, pray, and then they would leave through the left-hand gate. But mourners, it says, and people suffering from a serious illness, and people who had lost something would enter through this gate and go up and pray and then come down the other way. Now, I don't know. I can understand why mourners would not go into the temple with the happy people. People who are ill, I can understand. They're not feeling good. They don't want to be around people who are, hey, let's go, let's celebrate, let's offer a sacrifice. No, so you separate them and give the mourners and the sick people some privacy. But people who's lost something, I don't get it. Now, I had to think about this, and I came up with a couple of explanations, because really the discussion about this is very limited. And the first explanation is perhaps the most obvious. When a person is looking for something, whether it's a set of car keys or a misplaced purse or wallet, that person is in a frantic state and really unfit to be with other people. When I am running all over the house looking for my keys, that's not the time to ask me if I want chicken or brisket for dinner Friday night, because you're not going to like my answer. But I think there's actually a second and a better reason. I want to suggest that the rabbis weren't talking about people who were losing things like keys and purses, but about more important things. People who had lost their way in life, people who had lost their sense of purpose and hope, people who had lost their joy in living. Because when you've lost those things, you're like someone in mourning. You're like someone who's seriously ill because you've been robbed of something that is truly dear to you. They gave you a reason to get up in the morning and enabled you to genuinely enjoy life. What kind of losses am I talking about? I'll give you two examples today. I'm talking about a man in our congregation who took me to lunch. After a few niceties, the man says to me, the reason, Rabbi, I wanted to take you to lunch today is because I'm not feeling up to myself. I've lost faith in me. Not me, him. For years, he worked at a job that he enjoyed and with which he proudly identified. When people would ask him what he did, he would always tell them, I'm a vice president of this, so I own my store, I run a shop, I'm the executive director, I'm the manager. And now when people ask him what he did, it's in the past tense, of course, but it's sort of like, oh, okay. Didn't you used to be somebody at the bank? Didn't you used to have this big job somewhere? It's like people see me all the time, ever since I retired. Didn't you used to be a rabbi? Now, I have no problem people asking me that because I'm very happy retired, but many people struggle. I could make a habit of eating lunch out 5 days a week with all the men, primarily men, who retired who knows how many years ago and don't know what to do with themselves and don't feel important and don't feel needed and don't feel like anyone has respect for them. What do you say to a man who feels like that, who's lost faith in who he is? Now, there's another man in our congregation I met. I don't know this young man. He said he was a member of Beth Yeshurun, and I met him in my office, you know, the one I have at HEB. That's where I see most of my congregants, and we talk, and I learn about all their problems. I tell them, you're welcome to come to my office. We can sit down and talk. No. We're right here. You know, cereal aisle was very quiet at the time. It turns out a few months ago, he was laid off from a high-tech job. Young guy. He said, I went to school. I got a job right out of school, man, and I was making really good money. And then they had a layoff, but it wasn't just me. It was like 1,000 people. And when I went out looking for another job, well, I thought, I've got the credentials, I've got the experience. He said, I'm going to get another job as good or better. And months later, he's still looking. He's still applying, and everybody tells him, we'll let you know. And he said, I sat in the synagogue on Rosh Hashanah, and all I could think about was, what does my wife think of me? Does she still respect me? I can't get a job. What do my kids think when I don't have the money that we had to give them everything they want and everything I want them to have? And it's not just my wife and my children, it's my friends. How long am I going to be able to keep my friends when I'm someone who can't find a job? I can't do the kinds of recreational activities that I used to do with them. I have to watch the bucks until I get some more income coming in. I don't feel good about myself. I've lost my self-esteem. I've lost my image, he told me. Maybe one of those people was sitting next to you on Rosh Hashanah. Maybe they'll be sitting with you on Yom Kippur. Here's what I would say. I think I'd begin by quoting Superman. In an episode I saw once of Lois and Clark, there's a scene where Lois Lane is fawning all over Superman, and she asks him how it feels to be the world's most powerful man. And he replies, Lois, Superman is what I do. He's not who I am. Regardless of what we have done or how much we have earned, none of that changes who we are. What we are is something far deeper. It's not our jobs, it's in our souls. That is where God has planted the essence of each of us. And it is from within that we can find the answer when we lose faith in ourselves. I think that's why the sages in the days of the temple had people like these two men I told you about. People who had lost something so deep and painful. People who had lost faith in themselves. They too had to come to the temple. They too chose to come to the temple. And they walked in with the mourners and the people who were ill. Yes, the people said around them, we're glad you came. We want you to come. Don't stay away. We won't make you enter the gate through the same doorway that all the happy people entered. But we want you to come and want you to see you're not alone, and your presence can still make a difference. You can still help others, hold others, because even if you're not who you were, we still love you for who you still are. I love the story about the well-known speaker who started off a seminar by holding up a crisp $20 bill. In a room filled with about 200 people, he asked, who would like this $20 bill? And of course, every hand shot up. Of course. So then he takes the bill and he crumbles in his hand. and crumbles and crumbles and crumbles, and he opens it up, and it's all wrinkled up. Looks like you know what. Now, who wants this $20 bill? Every hand went up in the room, right? $20. Then he put it on the ground. He stomped it with his feet. He put his heel to it and rubbed it and rubbed it and rubbed it. It was just practically shredded. He says, now, who wants this $20 bill? And they looked and said, we'll take it, we'll take it. And the teacher said, my friends, you've all learned a very valuable lesson, not about $20 bills, but about life. No matter what I do to the money, you still want it because it does not decrease in value. It's still worth $20. And many times in our lives, we feel crumpled up, we feel we're worthless, we feel we've been just treated, put through the grinder. But no matter what has happened to us or what will happen to us, we will never lose our value. And I think that story illustrates why our sages felt it was so important. The people who were down on themselves, who had lost that sense of who I am and what am I worth, they too still needed to come to the temple in Jerusalem. And I think it's why it's so important for those people to still come to the temple, our temple, not in Jerusalem, but right here in Houston, to see that they are still needed, still welcome, still appreciated, still valued because of what they are, who they are, not what they have. There are people in our congregation who have lost so many precious things. Over the years, I've met so many men and women who've told me that they've lost their faith in God. I was at a house several months ago, and I was meeting with this woman and her family. She had lost her husband. It was a very nice meeting. We had a lovely time. I learned a lot about a really sweet man. And as I was leaving, I said, well, I'll see you in Shul. Just a little toss-away phrase. She says, no, not this year. I said, why not? You gonna be away? She says, no, I'm not coming. I don't believe in God anymore. I've had it with God. God, she said, had let her down. She was raised to believe that if you live a good life, it's honest, you're ethical, you're moral, then God will protect you and keep you from harm. He will watch over you because you do his mitzvot. But God did not keep his end of the bargain. My husband, she said, suffered for years before he finally passed away. And he died years before he should have, Rabbi. He was taken. What kind of a God is that who would take my husband? So God did not keep his end of the bargain, and I'm not going to keep my commitment to him. Now, if she had lived in temple days 2,000 years ago, she might have been encouraged to go to the temple services, but she wouldn't have gone with all the other people, the happy people, the normal people. She would have gone with the mourners, mourning her loss of faith. Some of us have endured indeed terrible things, painful things, terrible losses in our lives. We've laid to rest a beloved spouse or parent, or worse, a child. And however strong we were in our faith, at times we want to raise up our fist and shout at God, why? What did I do to deserve such unbearable suffering? What kind of a God would take my innocent child or cause my beloved wife to endure such agony? What can we say to that person who has lost the will to be a person in the shul? Can we give them a theological explanation? Can we give them a book to read? But I think the answer is not theology, but people. Not explanation, but consolation. When you cry out to God, how can you let things like this happen? There's no answer except for this one. God answers you by sending you people to work day and night to try to make you whole, people to sit with you and assure you that you're not alone, you're not rejected, people to bear witness that they once stood where you are standing, and endured much of what you're going through. You'll survive because that's what you do with tragedy. If nothing else, God has given you the strength to overcome and to get back on with your life. No, the answer is not to explain what happened to her husband or to justify it. I've seen people try to do that. There's a reason. I've seen it in the lives of so many of you. No answers we give can help. You're hurt, you're bereaved, you're angry, you may feel betrayed. But then you come to the shul for the minyan, and you see 3 or 4 other people that are all mourners, they're all saying Kaddish just as you are, and you feel less alone, less singled out by faith. You know, you can say 98% of the prayers in our Siddur without a minyan at home by yourself. But there are several prayers that you can do only with a minyan. That means you have to come to shul. Prayers like the Mourner's Kaddish can only be said with a minyan because when you're depressed and you're hurt and confused and you're angry, it's hard to find God by yourself. It's easier to find God in the incarnation of people who gather around you because they want to help, they care about you. People reach out to you, people show they care and wash away that sense of loneliness so many of us have when we're grieving. You see, God's promise is not that everything will be all right. God's promise is that when things are not all right, you'll be all right because he will be with you, strengthening you, lifting you, and finding people here who will embrace you and love you. And that's why I think people who lost their faith in God in temple times still came, and they entered, though, from the other side. They entered with the mourners, with the people who were ill, the people who had lost something dear. As they had lost their faith, they were questioning God. They were asked to go the wrong way on a one-way street, to enter by the door which everyone else was using to come out. And I believe this was done to heal them, that somehow the other worshipers coming out of the temple might give comfort and give hope and put their arms around them and embrace them and assure them that they would survive. My friends, I started with lost keys. Let me finish with lost keys. There's an old joke you might have heard, I love telling it, about the man crawling on his hands and knees around the lamppost at night. He's looking for something, and a friend passes by and says, "What are you doing?" Well, he says, "I dropped my keys, and I can't find them." So the friend asks, "Did you drop them right here under the lamppost?" The man says, "No, I dropped them down the block." He says, "Well, why are you looking here?" To which the man replied, "Because the light is better here." It's a silly story, but it's funny. And there's some logic to it. If you're looking for a lost physical object, like my keys, or a piece of paper with a phone number on it you got to find, you won't find it unless you look for it where you left it. But if you're looking for something spiritual, not physical, if you're looking for your lost faith, if you're looking for a way to make sense of your life, yourself, your own self-esteem, maybe it does make sense to search for it where the light is better. The light of God, the light of Torah, the light of people who have gone through what you're going through, who you will see in shul. You'll meet them. People who have somehow prevailed against the darkness and who have found renewed hope in living and thriving and sharing. Even as in ancient Jerusalem, people whose ability to believe in themselves, to believe in God, went nonetheless looking for it in the light of the temple. And there they met other people who gave them encouragement and hope and energized their lives. And when those who were hurting met those who were now whole, and when they saw and heard what the life-giving contact with the temple had done for them, an amazing thing happened. That which had been lost was found. Shabbat shalom, everybody.